hate stress. It really makes life a lot worse. And if we can just eliminate it out of our lives, we'll be in a better spot. I mean, if you look at US presidents, one of the most stressful jobs, when they enter office, they look young and ready to take on the world. But after 4 to 8 years, they look so much older. And that's what stress can do to your life. And so today I want to give you some of my tips of how I deal with stress so that you can live a more stress-free life. See, when you think about stress, it's really caused when two things come together. The first is when you really need or want something. And then the second piece is when that thing is really difficult or unclear on how you're going to achieve it. And the body then gives you some of this experience that we call stress. And it's a bit beneficial to us because it encourages us to take action when we know we need to. But our bodies go overboard and we feel despair at times with this stress that just hangs over our life. So let's break those two things apart and start to figure out how we might be able to reduce stress by looking at these components. So that first, that needing or really wanting something. Well, if we could reduce that, that could help us reduce stress. In fact, Buddhist monks take this strategy. They actually try to find ways to really not want anything. And as a result, they live a very stress-free, relaxed kind of life. It's a great way to live, but it's not good for almost any of us. We all want things in life. And if we want to really try to make an impact on this world, if you're living life at a higher level than most, well, for you're going to be faced with this all the time. There's things that you're going to be wanting to accomplish. So there's a second approach. And this is for us to temper that desire. Now, that's easier said than done, but the technique that I found really valuable in my own life is something that I call diversification of interest. In the finance world, diversification is a powerful tool to help you get a higher rate of return with lower volatility. But in the emotional world, in the human world, we can also diversify our interests. Here's what I mean. If you're entirely focused on one thing in your life and that thing is going well, you're going to be on top of the world. But if that thing is not going well, you're going to be down in the gutter. Your life, your experience, your stress is directly tied to the ups and downs of that one thing. But if instead you've got other things in your life, those things might be in a good place where other things are in a bad spot. For example, let's say you have a strong work life, a healthy family life, maybe a number of interests you really like. Well, maybe your family is going really well, but work is going really poorly. Well, those two things start to help balance each other out a little bit. So it takes some of the sting out of work. I know on tough days when I come home, my wife is there to greet me and she hugs me and just that joy that she brings, the joy from the kids wanting to play helps soften the blows of a hard day at work. Maybe family life isn't going so well, but you've got a great hobby that you really enjoy that you can kind of escape from the experience you're having in your family life, right? The more different kinds of interests you have will help smooth out your life in a way that you can't have if you just focus on one thing. So that's this first chunk, trying to mitigate that need or really wanting something. But now let's look at the second part of this, that difficult or unclear path to achieve what you really want. Now, there's a few tips here. And the first is to take massive action. See, I've heard people say that if you're really stressed out, just take one small step forward. And, that's a good piece of advice. And if you're really struggling, if you're new and only learning how to deal with stress, absolutely take one small step forward. But for those that are really trying to make a meaningful impact in the world, one small step, it's not enough. It's not even close. Instead, you need to take massive action to solve the issue at hand. Let me give you an example. See, I run a company, a $200 million company that builds and manages apartments. In one of the apartment projects that we were building at one point, we were just starting to break ground, and the next step we needed to do was lay blocks for the basement, the parking garage of the building. It's just concrete blocks that had to be laid. Now, we had selected a block contractor to do that work, and it was going to be good. We were all good in a good spot. But 2 weeks before they were supposed to start, they called me up and said there's no way they can get out to do our job. Well, you would think it'd be easy just to pick up the phone and call one block contractor because, of course, they want the money, right? Well, in the world of construction, oftentimes the contractors and subs, they are really hard to get, especially during the busy time of the year. They almost don't care about your money because they just want to get in and get other jobs done. So we were faced with this big challenge. And part of the reason it was such a big challenge is we had our crew, our staff coming to work on this building. And if I couldn't solve it, if I couldn't find a block contractor to come out in 2 weeks, which is a very tall order, then our staff could be laid off. And then not only that, the financial viability of this project could totally fall apart. My life is on the line for this one block contractor. Well, I could have called just one. I didn't. Instead, I literally called every single block contractor, every single one in our region. It was about 70 of them. So if I called one at a time, one after another, there's no way I would have gotten through all of them in the time that I needed. Instead, I needed to take massive action. And see, I've seen this a problem that many people do when they're faced with a big challenge. They find one solution and they latch onto that one solution. Well, guess what? Your first solution rarely ever works. And so if you latch onto that one solution thinking you've got it and it falls apart, you're screwed. It is way better to go at it and tackle multiple problems at once. And what I call this is I call it acting in parallel, not series. See, acting in parallel is when you do a bunch of things at once rather than doing one thing after another after another. So that's one of my first tips. My second tip is this. Find relief in the little successes. See, people who are making a major impact in life, their problems aren't problems that can be solved in one day or 1 week or 1 month or even over the course of 1 year. In fact, one of the billionaires I interviewed on our podcast, he spent 2 years of his life in the most stressful of environment, not sure if he'd make it by, scraping by every dollar and cent that he had. I can't imagine what that must have felt like. But the thing that I have learned going through similar situations is that your body starts to adapt. And if you can give your body small successes, you will feel relief in those moments. Yeah, the big weight isn't off, but you'll be able to sleep that night. You'll be able to enjoy your weekend a little bit more just by having made that little success along the way. My last overarching tip is this, and that is that you're going to grow the muscle. See, my kids, they haven't learned to grow this muscle of dealing with stress yet. And so when we ask them to clean up their room, it feels like to them an overwhelming task. To any adult, it's easy. You're done in a half an hour. But for them, it's overwhelming because they haven't built out the muscle. See, as you take on more and more and more stressful environments and challenges, your capability to deal with that stress grows and grows and grows. And so my challenge to you is not to avoid stressful situations, instead to lean into them and deal with it and overcome it. Because when you get past that hump, life gets so much easier. See, when I look back at my own life and the challenges that I've been through over the past several years or past decade, those challenges honestly feel easy today, even though back when I was in it, it felt overwhelming. And that only came because of a ability or willingness to take on bigger and bigger challenges. Now, my sub point to this, there are things that you can do to improve your capability of dealing with these challenges when they face. And the point I want to mention now is the difference between your manual side of your brain and your automatic side of your brain. See, there's two major components. This manual side where you're actively, consciously thinking about the problem in front of you. And then you have the automatic side. These are the habits that you have in life. Now, most of us only spend about 10% of our lives in the manual state and 90% in the automatic state. Now, here's the trick. With that manual state, take that time to improve your automatic state. How do you do that? For me, I'll give you an example. For me, I eat pretty healthy today, but it wasn't always that way. In fact, eventually one day it kind of came to a head and I decided I needed to make a change. I wanted to live a more healthy lifestyle. And so it was a lot of work. I had to use that conscious manual part of my brain to study what are healthy foods? How can I make this food? How can I make it easy? What kind of supplements should I have in my life? And it took weeks to figure all this out. It was gnarly. It was not fun. But with time, I figured out a habit, a routine that I could follow that was super easy. And guess what? Now I follow that routine every single day. And I don't even think about it. I'm eating healthy. I'm living a healthy lifestyle automatically. See, you want to take your manual time to improve your habitual, automatic self. And in doing so, you're going to grow a greater capacity to deal with bigger, more gnarly, challenging problems. So, I hate stress, and I know you hate it too. Together, we can reduce the stress in all of our lives by simply following the tips that I've shared in this video. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope these tips improve your life as well.